All right. Good morning again, everybody, and welcome. Um, I am going to talk today about method. It's like, what on earth does that mean? Method. Um, so this is on Sundays recently, I've been talking about the fundamentals, the foundations of our practice. So we've gone through like the precepts and the breath, and can't even remember what other things we talked about. There's some foundational stuff to do with practice. And really central to this is a meditation method. The meditation method, following your breath. Breath is a method. Um, Attention to sensations in the body. This is a method. If you're used to Zen, shikantaza, um, silent illumination, that's a method. So these are, we think of them as practices, but the word I'm using is method. The method is something that we hold on to. It's something that is a place of safety for us to keep us present. If we don't have a method, then where is our mind? It's being dragged around by our habits. Our habits are driving the bus. The method, which is the method is what allows us to drive the bus. Um, it's kind of a steering wheel or a rudder, place to come back to. So I want to talk about the method, different kinds of methods, and why the method's so important. Importantly, the method, it's easy to think of this, okay, so you've given me this method, you've told me to work on this method, so now you've limited me. But freedom is a word we use in this country without really thinking too much about what it means. We think of freedom to do stuff, but there's a well-known book in business circles. It's one of those great business books that's like 200 pages long and it needs to be 6 pages because the message is pretty short, but you've got to sell them. So you've got to write 100,000 words. I can't remember the name of the book, but it's Malcolm Gladwell, who's a brilliant thinker. And in this book, he's talking about the experience of going in, among other things, you go into a grocery store and you walk down the cereal aisle. Yeah, hundreds of different kinds of cereal, utterly overwhelming. Freedom to choose any kind of cereal actually becomes utterly overwhelming, and it's not freedom at all, it's paralysis. So, freedom in this context is freedom from, it's freedom from your ego. If you hold onto your method, if you come back to your method, the ego is not driving the bus anymore. It's chatting away in the background, maybe, but you're not listening to it. You're free from it. So this is the purpose, the point of a method. There are lots of different kinds of method. I've given you sort of a sense of a couple of them so you can, you know what I'm talking about. You're grounded in what method is. And I'll talk more about different methods in a minute. Um, First of all, I want to go through what I, just thinking ahead of this, I've got 5 pillars of the method. Pillar 1, love your method. If you're in love with somebody or you've got a loved one, when something happens, you say, oh, this is so nice. Wouldn't it be nice if, in my case, Beth or my kids, Neil and Morgan, wouldn't it be nice if they were here? Wouldn't it be nice to share this with that person? They're always in mind. You always want to come back to them. You always want them to be part of what's going on. So if we cultivate this relationship with our method, we'll always be wanting to bring the method in. We'll always be wanting to come back to the method. We cultivate this relationship with the method by really being curious about the method. It's just the same as we are with our loved ones. For it to be a really meaningful relationship, whether you really want them to be there with you, you're curious about them. You're interested in how they experience things. You're happy when they're happy. And you're really tuning into what's going in with them. So we're cultivating this relationship with the method by being curious, by being really interested, by being really sensitive to it. The breath is a great example. If we're sent, because it's so accessible to us, and it's probably what most of you, all of you, probably got experience working with the breath. So if we tune into our breath, then we can feel how peaceful it makes this body. And when we're stressed, take a couple of deep breaths and it changes everything. There's this somatic experience of how the method really helps us, how safe it is, how peaceful it is. And if we think of it in these terms as the method, as a place of safety, as somebody we're very fond of, we love them, then it cultivates that relationship where it's like, oh, it would be so nice for the method to be. This is so stressful. Let me bring the method in because together this is so much more peaceful, so much more pleasant, and we'll really enjoy this. So love your method. And if you don't cultivate that, there's going to be tension. So you'll forget to call the method in. You'll feel resistance to calling the method in. So number one, love the method. Number two, your method will never let you down. I could write little post-it cards so you can all take these home afterwards. Number two, your method will never let you down. People let you down. How many of you got a loved one who has never let you down? Never, right? I don't see any hands going up. Doesn't mean we don't love them. It doesn't mean they don't love us. But people let us down because they've got their own agendas and they don't always match ours because they're not as sensitive to our needs and our feelings as we'd like them to be. So they miss cues. People let us down. The method will never let us down. We know how the method works. We bring the method in, it's always available, it's always present, it's never too busy for us. It's always available to respond in the way we want it to. So number two, your method will never let you down. Number three, if you have a wandering thought, how many people never have wandering thoughts? Again, this is, I don't expect a single hand to go up here. We all have wandering thoughts, right? Wandering thoughts when the mind just takes off. It's like, oh, how long have you been over there? If you have a wandering thought, it simply means you're not on your method. It's as simple as that. If you notice you've got a wandering thought, it's like, oh, come back, method, come back. Help me a little bit here. Let's find a little peace. Because wandering thoughts, this is exactly what the method is working against, right? A wandering thought is literally your ego at work. A wandering thought is literally your karma taking over. You got this big Santa Claus bag of stuff, as Guagu calls it. This Santa Claus bag, you do things and you just throw these toys in the Santa Claus bag because you're building habits. And then you put your hand in the bag and you just pull one out. You don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be one of these habits. So your wandering thoughts are literally your karma just unfolding. That's what it is. So if you've got a wandering thought, you've taken your hands off the steering wheel, the bus is just going off on its own. Come back to the method. And you don't have to be forceful with it. If you just remind yourself of the method, the wandering thoughts kind of quieten down and wander off on their own. Just come back, just put your hands back on the steering wheel. That's all that's doing. You're not fighting anything. You're just putting your hands back on the steering wheel. And what will happen is your wandering thoughts, they're still out there. You're just not paying attention to them. So they're not really disturbing you. And when you get used to doing this, when this habit gets built, when the relationship with the method gets built so that this is a stronger tie, then the wandering thoughts, they just become more and more quiet. Eventually, one day you look around and they've kind of shut up for a while. It's cool. Back to the steering wheel. So that brings us directly to pillars 4 and 5. Pillar 4, always come back to your method. Those of you who are used to meditation practice, who've been in environments where the central practice is breathing, you're just familiar with the refrain, come back to your breath, come back to your breath. It's true for any method, just come back, come back. And another one you hear a lot in spiritual circles, Buddhist circles and other spiritual circles is come back to the body. Same thing, come back to the body. You're then using the body, being grounded in the body as your method. It's come back. Because the practice there is as simple as, if you remember to come back to your method, whatever is causing the stress is no longer in charge. It may still be out there, but it's not in charge, and you've completely shifted what's going on. You focus then on the method. So come back. That is the practice, folks. This is the practice. It's just to always be mindful of coming back to the breath. Um, there's a sidebar here, which is the tradition I take 5 pillars of from. Um, in Islam, you have to constantly be mindful of where the sun is. You do it by looking at your watch, but you've got to be mindful of where the sun is because you've got 5 prayer calls every day. And you've always got to remember the 5 prayer calls because you've got these little windows to make your prayers. Always mindful. And particularly on a Friday, because Friday afternoon you go to the masjid to do your prayers, you've got to be mindful of where you are physically. Are you in a place where you can actually take your prayers? Got to be spatially mindful. And then the last one is you have to be mindful of your state of cleanliness. There are everyday things like going to the bathroom disrupts what's called wudu, which is your state of bodily cleanliness. And you have to be in the state of bodily cleanliness before you pray, or your prayers will not be acceptable to Allah. So you've got to be mindful of, are you in a state of wudu? And if not, are you in a place where you can get to a tap so you can clean yourself before the next prayer call, right? So it's just, this is sidebar, but this sense of coming back, always being present, always being aware, is just such a deep spiritual practice. Always come back to your method is the practice. And the third one, I'm losing count, going backwards. The fifth one, the method itself is freedom. The method is freedom. So again, what is this freedom? This freedom is freedom from our vexations, freedom from our ego, freedom from wandering thoughts. The method is that freedom. So if we're with our method, if you go on we had a one-day retreat here yesterday, and several of the folks in this room were on the one-day retreat. So you got like 8 hours to just sit, to 8 hours to really settle, to leave the disruption of the world behind. If you take those longer periods of practice, things can settle and your concentration strengthens. So you know, like, oh, I'm on the method, and now I'm not, and now I'm on it again. And so you have these little periods where you're on the method, but everyday stuff interrupts. If you find these places of seclusion, that kind of fades. So you're able to stay with the method longer. As you stay with the method longer, your concentration gets stronger. So these little threads of concentration extend. You get longer threads of concentration. And as you stay in that place of concentration, you're concentrating on your method, on your breath, on bodily sensations, on your huato or koan, whatever your method is. As you stay with the method, concentration becomes stronger, longer periods, and then you get this experience of unification of concentration, where the koan is no longer something you're concentrating, the method is no longer something you're concentrating on. There's no separation. Subject and object are one. And this actually is something most of you have experienced at different points in your life, this sense of unification. When you're my mum experienced this many, many years ago when they were visiting from the UK. We went to the Grand Canyon, and I could just see the sense of awe when the sun rose over the Grand Canyon. She'd never experienced anything like that before. Absolute unification. There was no mum, there was no son, there was just this unified experience. My sister had the same many, many years ago. She came over. We went to Disney World. Can't remember why. I think it was like her honeymoon or something. And so they were going up the East Coast, and I went to Disney World with them for a few days. And when she walked in the Magic Kingdom, she walked through the entryway, and there's Sleeping Beauty's palace. And exactly the same happened. You got all that cheesy bunch of shops around you, and then you got that castle up in front, the palace of the castle up in front. She had exactly the same experience. You could see it in her whole demeanor, just utterly unified. So it can be if you're present when a baby's born. There's these kind of moments. It's not an unusual experience to have, but this is something that we cultivate with our method, and it becomes something. Um, it's the gateway to freedom. It's the gateway to freedom. So I go through that long discussion about concentration and this unification because that unification is where the complete dropping off of body and mind, the complete waking up, the complete loss of this illusion of a me in the middle of this. That's where that can happen. So the method is freedom, and you get different levels of depth of the freedom. If you're um, in a stressful situation, you come back to your method, it feels relatively free. The load has gone, it's lighter. There's still very much a me in the middle of that. It's not freedom, but it's a lot freer. And we keep on deepening that, and there are these opportunities to deepen it and make that deeper sense of freedom um, more normal. So it just becomes a more everyday experience for us. All right, so those are the 5 pillars of the method. Different types of method. Number 1 is, of course, breath, breathing meditations. So it's following the breath, come back to the breath, come back to the breath. I've used it as an example in a couple of ways. Another way it's a good example is because it's a good way of looking at different degrees of subtlety within the method, which is a little bit of what I just talked about with how concentration works. But with the breath, most of the time when you're sitting, you're just following the breath. But are you following it here? Are you looking at the sensations going in and out of the nostrils, warm, cold, silky, smooth, rough? Are you just looking gently at the rising and falling of the chest? Or at a more subtle level, the rising and falling of the abdomen? Or at a more subtle level still, there's just this vague awareness of perception of breath, but there's no awareness of body moving. The body's gone. No sensation of body. There's just this vague, open sense of the presence of breathing in this stillness. Different degrees of subtlety. Going the other way, if you're in a really disruptive environment, coming back to the breath is not enough of an anchor. You can count the breath, count to 10 on the out breaths, and then let go and come back and start at 1 again. If that's not enough, count backwards in 3s from 29. Because it's harder to do that than from 30. Most of us know the 3 times table. We don't know 29, 26, 23, right? So do something that gives the mind a little more to hold on to. And we're doing this with following the breath. Another thing that comes out of that is the breath is, excuse me, the method should be somatic. It should be embodied. A method that's in your head isn't going to be much use because the problem is precisely the wandering thoughts in your head. Staying in your head isn't really going to help. You're just creating another string of wandering thoughts. These methods are coming back into your body. So the breathing is very much a body experience. You're coming into the physicality of breathing with different degrees of subtlety. And even when you're counting, it's not a head count. It's a body count. You're not saying, okay, I need to remember I'm on 1. What comes next? 2 comes next. You're making this a somatic embodied experience. Labeling is what I go to next. Labeling is another method, and it's a good method. It can be a good method. It's a method, and one other thing that comes out, it's like this anapanasati. Within it's a breathing meditation. Within it, you've got this spectrum of different intensities, different levels of activity involved in being engaged with the method. Different methods inherently have different levels of activity involved in them. So different methods are going to be appropriate for different people at different times, depending on their mental state, depending on how they are, who they are. So labeling is a common method too. And with labeling, what you do, you got this whole string of wandering thoughts, and you say, work, put it in that drawer. Relationships, that drawer. Organization, put it in that drawer, which is what we're doing, right? Putting it in drawers. So you're putting the thoughts into categories, and it's a way of removing yourself from getting caught up in the story. It's turning the wandering thought into a phenomenon, so you can then deal with the phenomenon and put the phenomenon aside. That's what you're doing with this method of labeling. Got to be careful with it. And it's obviously it's appropriate. It's just got a lot of wandering thoughts, and it's a way of helping you break down and remove the wandering thoughts. It's a pretty gross, as in heavy method. And it's not one that's going to be suitable as your practice stabilizes. It may still be suitable from time to time when you're in a particularly stressful place, but it's not going to be suitable as your practice stabilizes. But something you got to be careful with a method like that is, and it's true when you're doing the counting with the breath too, is it's easy for you to turn that into a head method. It's easy because you're actually categorizing. Is that one family or is that organization? I'm arranging a family vacation. Which of those two categories do I put in? Well, this and this and this suggest over here, but really, you've just created another story out of this. You're not on the method at all. The method is simply done. Done, right? So you've got to avoid this trap of getting caught making stories out of a method. It's very much about being in the body, being experiential. Silent illumination or shikantaza is just being present and being settled and still and being really aware of what's happening. Posture. Being aware of posture. Upright. Hands in meditation posture. Legs crossed. Just fully aware of posture. Aware when you've slumped and you straighten up. And you've got to be very intentional and very focused. That's a method. A thing to watch out for with that one, there's something a lot of people say, well, just be present with whatever's coming up. You've got a sore leg, so be present with that. Pay attention there. Now you've got an itch, be present with that. No. Because what you're doing there, you're letting the wandering thoughts take over. You've let go of the steering wheel. Who's driving that? Habits. Habits are driving that. You've got to stay in charge. With a method like that, it's much easier to pick a single sense gate. So pick sensation. I just talked about posturing. Pick touch, physical sensation, posture, contact with the ground. If there's any breeze, if there's any sensation with movement of air in the room. Sounds come up, that's not the method. I'm here. So there's discipline involved in this, staying present. Not letting outside factors draw you away, you still hijack you, you stay where you are. One that many of you have heard, I won't spend long on it because it's not one I'm qualified to teach, but it's actually what I use, is huatou, which is kind of a turning word. It's huatou is Chinese. It means basically before language. So what I'm doing is I'm basically all the time saying, what is it? What is it? What is it? Which is this curiosity to open up what's there. An equivalent one is, who were you before your mother was born? That kind of thing. Who is dragging this corpse around? These are equivalent ones. What is this primordial thing that's there before any of my experiences arise? That's what that's pointing at. But a koan or a huatou works by basically interrupting all cognitive processes. Whatever thinking happens, interrupt it. Whatever ideas come up, interrupt it. It's not to stop us functioning, although we need to be careful. Don't do it when you're driving, because if you do it when you're driving, it could be quite dangerous. Is that a red light? Interrupt thinking process? Bang, right? Not smart. So that's why I'm not qualified to teach it because it can be it can cause all it's a tricky one. But the way they work, I just wanted to bring it up because it's common. Koans look really mysterious and strange, but they're not really that strange because what they're doing is they're interrupting our thinking processes. They're interrupting these chains of thought. They're interrupting actually our sensory experiences too, because all of our sensory experiences are really perceptions of sensory experiences. We touch something, electrical signals to the brain. There's a gap, a complete gap, goes to the brain, and then the brain assembles those electrical signals, not the physicality, but the electrical signals, into a representation, and then starts manipulating the representations. Right. So we're not actually paying attention to the real experience. We're paying attention to our thoughts about the experience. Where past, present, and future will come from. So in that sense, the koan interrupts our experiencing as well, because it's interrupting this perception process, not the actual direct experience. So that's another method, and that's how that one works. Another one that many of you are probably familiar with is metta, which is reciting verses of loving kindness. You do it for yourself. May I be physically well, may I be emotionally, mentally well, may I be free from harm, and may I have the ease of well-being. That's a typical set of lines. Do it for yourself, do it for a loved one, do it for a benefactor, do it for a neutral person. We spread these around, do it for everybody. What that's doing, of course, that's a method. It's giving you something to hold on. So you're driving the bus, interrupting these wandering thoughts. And also, as with all methods, it's cultivating a particular valence of feeling tone within the body. This is one talking about things I talked about before. This is something I did talk about before, feeling tone. How we experience the world has far, far more to do with what our state of being is here than what's actually out there. If I've just had a really great day, I just got back from a week at the beach and I come home and my wife is ever so happy to see me and she's got me this nice meal and it's a lovely day. And then somebody steps on my toe. It's like, it's just no big deal. It was an accident. You're in a rush. I know you're worried about it. And I'm more worried about you being worried than I am about you stepping on my toe. It's fine. But if somebody just cut me off and I just got fired and I got a project that's not going too well and it's just chucking it down with rain and there's a leak in the roof, you step on my toe, I'm going to be pretty upset. So this feeling tone is how we experience the world. And each of these methods is working to cultivate a feeling tone, cultivating a feeling tone of contentment, of peace. And metta is cultivating a feeling tone of gratitude and of kindness and of warmth. It's a very beautiful practice. So those are some good examples of methods and how we can experience methods. Now, really importantly, the last thing I want to talk about is where we practice this. Obviously, you come here, you sit and you practice with the method on the cushion. Great. And then you get off and you go outside. And then something happens and you've forgotten all about this. You had a great time in here. Everything was chill. Everything was peaceful. And you go outside and something happens. You're back to normal. So this is like coming to the movie theater. Going out for a meal. You come here, you have a good time and you go outside and you just carry on. No, it's not what this practice is about at all. When you come into the meditation space, this is the physical space. Your body is this is the external physical space. Your body is kind of the internal physical space. When you come into this meditation space, it's a training ground. It's a place we experiment. What works, what doesn't work, what's coming up. Ooh, what do I do with that? Ooh, thank you. I'd never seen that this comes up and this is how I react. Thank you. That's really, really helpful. Now, when that happens out there, I've got a much better sense of what to do. I'll see it, I've got a chance of seeing what's happening and where I normally go. So I know how to head that off. Thank you. Thank you. So what really matters is learning from what happens in here, so that we can engage with that in the world. So we don't just find freedom when we come here. This meditation space is a lab where we can experience freedom and learn how to cultivate freedom wherever we are, whatever is going on, totally independent of external circumstances. That's what this is about. This is about taking our method with us. So it's always there. Be in love with your method. Your best friend, know it never lets you down. Keep calling it back wherever you are. I think that's enough from me. So I will stop talking at this point. I'll stop recording and invite questions and comments. Stop recording. There we go.